right. Joining us right now is Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, because let me tell you something. The Democrats, one of their key strategies in trying to lessen the hemorrhaging this November at the midterms, or maybe even try to figure out a way to keep the majority in the Senate and, well, doubtful, but maybe even in the House, was through the January 6th committee hearings. In fact, we were told that, it was done, but then the second season would start this September, right? And that got delayed until what was supposed to be, well, right now. It was supposed to start today, closer to the election. But then Hurricane Ian came in. Tom Fitton, what's the status now of the January 6th committee hearings? Did they cancel it, postpone it because of the hurricane? What's happening?
It looks as if they postponed it due to the hurricane, or so they say, because it is the Pelosi Schiff Rump committee. You can't really trust anything they're saying, but I guess it wouldn't be surprising if the hurricane threw a monkey wrench in their plans. But, it's probably a happy coincidence in the sense that the closer to the election they run this show trial, the better off they think they'll be, because it's not only about attacking Trump, it's about smearing, any candidate, or frankly all the Republican Party as far as they're concerned, with the idea that they're engaged in the worst thing in American history, when in fact all they were doing was disputing an election, because they've moved beyond, worrying about any individuals who were harmed on January 6th in terms of hurt and, the riot that took place and the disturbance, to attacking anyone who had questions about the 2020 election, which is almost half the country. Yeah,
and that's really where I want to go with this. Just so everyone knows, this has now been postponed until next Tuesday. Is that right? That's when they're scheduling, but who knows, depending on how this hurricane hits. Tom, one narrative that we saw sort of leaked out this week leading into this scheduled committee hearing was the idea that there was a phone call between the White House switchboard and one of the people in the Capitol during the riot. But I keep getting mixed messages, and I don't know if you've got details on this. One story is that the call came from the White House to the protester. Another says that the protester actually called the switchboard of the White House, which is, not a big deal, I wouldn't think. Do we know what the truth is on this?
No, we don't know what the truth is. My response to that is yawn. This is coming out as a result of a book by a former staff member who was actually a former congressman too. Believe me, if they thought it was a big deal, we would have heard about it sooner out of the main committee. And, this is just a case of them just throwing out anything out there and see what sticks. I think the bigger news this week is the news that Ginny Thomas, our friend, has decided to be interviewed by the committee, which to me just highlights where the committee's head is at. So this is not about any more January 6th. This is now about abortion and the Roe ruling, and how is it we smear a sitting justice by pretending that First Amendment protected activity by his wife is something that Congress and the American people should be nervous about.
And if I could continue on another thread that we keep hearing, and that is this idea that certain individuals were recommending an alternate slate of electors to the Electoral College, and they're building this narrative that, see, this was the coup, this was the plan. They would eliminate these electors to the Electoral College. Pence would reject them, and then they'd walk in with this alternate slate with a shadow government. All these things that you're hearing on the fever swamp there. Is there something unprecedented, Tom, about this contingency plan? Should there be an objection to the electors and the way that the electors were chosen to actually have an alternate slate?
The Democrats have done it in virtually every election.
That's what I thought.
In 1960, they actually set up an alternative slate of electors in Hawaii. And what's going on, and also, by the way, they were planning to do it in 2020 if things went south for them in terms of the election. John Podesta, who's now coming in as a Biden White House official, was running a war game for the left, and their war game included having states threaten to secede from the Union if alternative slates weren't seated on behalf of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So, this is all just an effort to target those Americans who were considering alternative slates during the election season, meaning this election season. And so that means you've got dozens of subpoenas going out there targeting Trump supporters and elected officials in the states. There's nothing like this that's ever happened in American history. Not electors' disputes, but a political party, and this is a one-party committee, using the powers of Congress to target and harass and try to jail other members of the other political party. I'm not aware of anything like it in American history. You have to go back to maybe Woodrow Wilson with his attacks on First Amendment during World War I to see anything comparable.
Yeah, and I think this is a really clarifying point because, again, we've been talking about this a lot this morning, I know, on the show all the time, about things that a majority of Americans feel and think. The left is trying to make you feel that you are a radical or you're certainly in the minority. And yet, as you point out, this is to have people who say, hey, we just want to make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed in our election. That happens every single election process. You have people who denied the results of the 2000, and just in my immediate lifetime, 2000, 2016. I mean, every single election, there's always Democrats who said, I don't believe the results of this. And yet you have these polls that have been coming out that I question the methodology, but they say, threats to democracy is the number one issue for voters. And I can't help but think, well, that's subjective, because this may be backfiring, that the very threat to democracy here is these exact protocols and procedures and people feeling that they are the next one to be canceled or to be investigated or to be vilified. And can you speak to a little bit there on maybe the historical context there, but also as we look to the midterms, what voters can and might and should be thinking as they see all of this unfold?
Well, it's a talking point of Joe Biden. He had his red speech a few weeks ago where he suggested anyone who disagreed with him was a threat to democracy. That's strongman politics, despotism. He's raided the home of his political opponent, Donald Trump. As I said, they have dozens of subpoenas. They're trying to target, maybe even jail, those who were participating in the election disputes of 2020. And, one way to, ensure, for instance, that some Americans might be hesitant to, be a poll watcher is to suggest that they'll be jailed if they do it. And, or if they do the right thing in the sense that they think they're supposed to be doing in terms of, highlighting potential areas of fraud. And, of course, that will obviously benefit them in 2024, the same principle there. And, the Democrats are likely to lose in November. So they're also trying to get ahead of Republicans who are going to come in and in the House, I would think, start raising questions about the 2020 election again, which I'm sure is going to not only give the Democrats heartburn, but certain Republican leaders heartburn who just hate the idea that, anyone wants accountability in government.
Well, especially since literally H.R. 1, the first bill that this Congress tried to pass was to solidify and institutionalize at the federal level all of the shenanigans that did exist in certain states during the 2020 election, because they're part of that. Tom, we got to leave it there. Tom Fitton.